Infirmary Media.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk here.
I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains. I'm gonna bash them right the fuck in.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
They're here.
Suspense. Tonight, Roma Wines bring you Robert Taylor in The House in Cypress Canyon, a suspense play produced, edited, and directed for Roma Wines by William Spear.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 90 of the Video Rangers podcast. I'm Mike Ranger, bringing you a very suspenseful episode as we kick off another episode of Frighttober. The glory days of radio have long since passed. Today's world enjoys various forms of entertainment at the click of a button. But before Netflix, before Sirius, before DVR, and long before television, there were radio dramas. The golden age of radio was filmed with all kinds of entertainment to suit any taste. Most of us have heard about the famous War of the Worlds broadcast, based on the novel by H.G. Wells, performed by the legendary Orson Welles of no relation. But my favorite of all the radio dramas was Suspense. The series focused on thriller, horror, and suspense scripts, performed by some of the Hollywood elite of the day. The series aired on CBS from 1942 through 1962, producing more than 900 episodes, over 80% of which are still in existence today. The radio may have told the story, but our imaginations brought it to life. Suspense has a lot of really entertaining episodes, many of which were later made into Twilight Zone episodes. Even though we are primarily a movie podcast, I thought it was important to highlight what came before the silver screen. There's plenty of shows to choose from, and even some new radio shows still being made by fans of the genre today. I could have chosen from any series, The Creaking Door, Inner Sanctum, The Shadow, or even Little Orphan Annie. But Suspense is my absolute favorite. And this week, I'd like to take a look at one of my all-time favorite episodes, The House in Cypress Canyon, written by Robert Richards and directed by William Spear, and starring Robert Taylor and Kathy Lewis as James and Ellen Woods. The show aired on December 5th, 1946, as episode 222. I've always found this broadcast to be bone-chilling, especially if you're able to curl up in front of a fire on a dark and stormy night. And don't be embarrassed if you feel the need to scream. The story is presented as a story within a story, opening with Detective Sam Spade, played by Howard Duff, responding to a friend's call about a discovery of a journal found in a newly completed house.
Well, I don't like it. That's all. There's something funny about it.
What's funny about it?
Well, mind you, this thing was found in an unfinished house in Cypress Canyon. House was only just started building.
All right.
Well, listen, Sam, I want to read it to you if you got the time, and you'll see what I mean.
All right.
This is the exact moment where the episode hooked me. The idea of a detailed manuscript found in an uncompleted house with information from the future that couldn't possibly be known. Sam's friend Jerry proceeds to read from the manuscript that has disturbed him since the house was completed, and the street number hung on the building.
To whom it may concern, my reasons for setting down on paper what follows here will be abundantly clear
to anyone into whose possession it may fall.
Ellen and Jim have recently relocated and have been looking for a home. They've drive by a new complex that's renting homes, and that's where they meet the real estate agent who is actually reading the story to the detective. An eerie feeling came over me the first time I heard this episode, and my imagination began to lose itself in the macabre. A storm is certainly brewing. The future and the past will suddenly collide.
Let me introduce myself. My name is James A. Woods, and this is my wife, Ellen.
How do you do? Wow. Looks like it's fixing to rain.
Yes, so it does, doesn't it?
Ellen and Jim end up taking the house and move in just before Christmas. The home came fully furnished, and they move in right away. They discover there's a door in the hallway that they can't get open. A locked door in a new home is certainly troubling, but nothing to be alarmed about. That is until we get our first terrifying howl.
Jim, if you could just help me move this armchair, huh?
Oh, Ellen, will you let it go until tomorrow? You know what time it is?
Oh, but, honey, I'd like to get the place looking just a
Yeah,
little
but it's
bit.
almost midnight. In fact, it's exactly...
What was that?
Tomcat, I guess, out in the brush somewhere.
Sounded near.
Now, one strange scream might certainly be disturbing, but a second, well, I'm packing my bags.
What do you think of Red?
Well, I guess it's all...
Jim.
It's some tomcat.
Jim, it sounded in the house.
Oh, now, how could it be in the house, Ellen? We've been over every inch of the house.
Except that closet.
Now, how could a cat or anything else be in the closet that's been locked up for over a year?
Now, Jim is a sensible guy, and in the spirit of 1946, Ellen is nothing more than a crazy dame. So Jim assures his wife nothing is wrong and convinces her to go to sleep. Just as their minds begin to sway between awake and sleep, a third bone-chilling howl sends a shockwave through their bodies.
I don't know what time it was, perhaps an hour, perhaps only a half hour later. My mind was in that hazy borderland between sleep and a dream that's still part of consciousness. Then I was awake.
This time the sounds seem closer, possibly in the house. It's then they discover something coming out from underneath that locked door.
Jim.
What?
There's something wet
What? Wet?
running from under the closet door. Dickie,
Ellen, don't touch it.
I had to. Jim, it's blood.
For suspense, Roma Wines are bringing you Robert Taylor in The House in Cypress Canyon. Roma Wines' presentation tonight in radio's outstanding theater of thrills, Suspense.
This episode showcases everything I love about suspense. The sound effects, the acting, everything is of the highest quality. And even modern audiences can relish in the thrilling entertainment enhanced by our own imaginations. The pictures are not created for us. No cinematographer will set the scene, and aside from Roma Wines, there's no annoying YouTube ad we have to click every couple seconds. Robert Taylor as Jim does an excellent job narrating the manuscript. Jerry and Ellen did leave the house after Ellen discovered and touched the blood, and only returned with 2 policemen. Except when they return, the blood is gone, the door's unlocked, and completely empty, and the police moving on to more important matters.
If you have any real trouble, call on us anytime.
All right.
Well, good night.
Good night.
Good night. Hey, you ought to have this door fixed. That's enough to scare you.
Yeah, we're going to have it fixed.
The couple is left feeling uneasy, and over the next few days, Ellen's behavior becomes quite strange. She's tired and frequently washes her hands. One night, Jim awakes to find Ellen is not next to him, and his instincts immediately draw him to the closet.
I opened the bedroom door and started through the house, putting on every light that I could find. There was not much to search, but I searched thoroughly. The living room, the kitchen, bathroom, den, even the garage. And all the time, the dread of looking where I knew at last I must look. For I think I knew from the very first time where I'd find her. It must have been a full minute that I stood before that closet door. Then I opened it. She stood there rigid, her arms at her sides, her fingers extended like claws. Her hair was over her face, her eyes stared out of it. Her lips were drawn back in a grin like an animal at bay. For a moment I was frozen with the horror of it. I stretched out my hand. Very deliberately, she turned her head and sunk her teeth until they met into the flesh of my forearm.
Despite what happened the night before, Ellen doesn't remember anything, and Jim doesn't feel the need to tell her. The pain in his arm is beginning to get worse, and it's becoming infected. While he's at work, it starts to turn black. His concerns of nightfall and the activities of his wife have Jim racing towards the house in Cypress Canyon, to Ellen, to the closet, to the door. When he arrived, the house was dark, the closet empty, and Ellen nowhere to be found. Jim waits patiently, listening to the radio, when he hears that the police must respond to an injured man who had been attacked. Jim, fearing the worst, arrives on the scene where a milkman has had his throat ripped out.
He was dead, and he was lying on his back, and his throat had been torn out as though by the fangs of some wild animal.
We return to Jim's narration, and the sense of fear and desperation he is able to convey puts the listener in the house with him. His fear is now our fear. His fate, our fate. And I must admit, had my eyes focused on the nearest closet door. Jim's fate seems certain. He knows what's coming and he knows what he has to do. And we are left with one final howl before returning to the pages of the manuscript.
I hear the cry again. It's nearer now. I shall leave these notes in a sealed envelope and put it in a shoebox, in the hope that someone will give credence to these dark and terrible events, if indeed such nameless horrors can ever yield to mortal understanding. As for myself, I feel no longer any fear or even sorrow, only a desire that the end and the thing that I must do may come soon. And it will be soon, I know. Yes, for there is someone at the door.
The real estate agent is obviously terrified, and despite the fear on the real estate agent's face, the detective believes absolutely nothing of the story. He writes it off as a complete hoax. Even with an included newspaper clipping covering the death of both James and Ellen is not enough to convince the detective. The house and its similarities to the one described in the story is too fantastic to believe, and the detective assures his friend it's not real and merely a coincidence. As the detective leaves, a couple pulls up to the real estate office.
Come in.
Oh, we're sorry to bother you, but we just happened to see that for rent sign outside.
Yeah, I hung it out just this minute.
Is the house available?
Oh, sure it is.
Let me introduce myself. My name is James A. Woods, and this is my wife, Ellen.
How do? Wow. Looks like it's fixing to... Right?
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I can't recommend this series enough. Another fantastic episode is called On a Country Road. This one was recorded twice, so if you're going to go look for it, you want the one that stars Cary Grant. It's really good, and it's about a couple who runs out of gas on an old road and while there's a maniac on the loose. I'll provide the link to this episode in the show notes, and it's also available on YouTube. I even actually have a vinyl record of this particular episode. I find the simplicity of radio as a medium for telling stories to be beyond satisfying. Suspense in a lot of ways has sent chills down my spine in a way most Hollywood frights never could. And as the leaves turn brown and settle across country roads, as sweaters and pumpkins enter our homes, I find comfort in radio's outstanding theater of thrills. This Halloween, when many will read their children stories of Ichabod Crane, of a covered bridge and a headless horseman, I'll turn the old radio dial to a series well calculated to keep you in
Suspense.
We hope you enjoyed this week's show and invite you back next week for more classic entertainment. The link for tonight's feature will be provided in the show's description, and we encourage you to seek out and experience these programs for yourself. We also invite you to check out some other Dynamite shows, part of the Infirmary Media family, over at infirmarymedia.org. Happy October from the Video Rangers Podcast.
It is later than you think. Lights Out brings you stories of the supernatural and the supernormal, dramatizing the fantasies and the mysteries of the unknown. We tell you this frankly. So if you wish to avoid the excitement and tension of these imaginative plays, we urge you calmly, but sincerely, to turn off your radio now.
Infirmary Media.